The Chicago Blackhawks keep Ryan Donato, but trade Petr Mrazek and Craig Smith at the deadline.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'm getting into a beefy Chicago Blackhawks trade deadline breakdown, and I'll also recap last night's epic 4-3 overtime win against the Utah Hockey Club as Connor Bedard has got his swagger back after the overtime winner. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, though, I'm sure you have noticed, not in the regular studio where I record in the Chicagoland area. If you missed Wednesday's episode, I touched on this a little bit, and then obviously the episode I dropped yesterday was an in-person crossover with Armando Velez, the host of Locked On Panthers, where we kind of touched on what the Panthers can expect from Seth Jones, the start of Spencer Knight's tenure here with the Blackhawks, as well as the moves each of our teams made at the deadline and some of the biggest winners and losers as a whole. So make sure to go and check out that episode if you haven't done so already. It was really fun to do an in-person show with Armando. We've obviously done lots of crossovers over the years, but yeah, haven't been down in the Orlando area since I was 10. I actually hosted Armando in Chicago a couple of years ago when he and some buddies came up for a Chicago Bears-Miami Dolphins game at Soldier Field. So it's been kind of cool to come down here while I'm covering a golf tournament in the Orlando area and stay with him a couple of days and do a show together. But on today's episode, Blackhawks fans, just want to say thank you for working with me while I'm on the road. I hope the audio and the video quality is up to snuff for all of you out there. If so, please make sure to hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, all of which 100% free, will not cost you anything, and really does help me out in a massive way as I'm now on the climb to 3,000 subscribers. But to open things up on the show here today, Blackhawks fans, I want to recap all the moves we saw the Blackhawks make at this year's NHL trade deadline, starting with the trade of Taylor Hall being sent to the Carolina Hurricanes about 2 months ago now, a little bit less. But Carolina, of course, acquired Taylor Hall from the Hawks as part of a 3-team trade that also helped land them Mikko Rantanen, except he only stayed there for 13 games. And if you did watch yesterday's show with Armando Velez, then you probably heard me call the Carolina Panthers an unserious organization based on what they've done this last year and a half, and honestly, just yesterday as a whole, trading Rantanen, saying, Eric Tulsky said he didn't have enough time after trading Rantanen to go and get some players to help keep this team a contender. They just can't pick a direction, and they can't keep a superstar. It's very unfortunate. But this trade landed the Carolina Hurricanes, Taylor Hall. It was a 3-way trade, as I said, but from the Blackhawks perspective, basically what it was trading Taylor Hall to Carolina in exchange for their own 2025 third round pick, which is going to be one of the first selections in the third round, of course, as opposed to, maybe people wanted to see the Blackhawks acquire a late second round selection for Taylor Hall, but that probably would have been with them retaining, and they didn't end up retaining any of Hall's salary, which, of course, that would have been an issue because then they wouldn't have been able to trade Seth Jones because Taylor Hall would have taken up that last salary retention spot. So not retaining anything on Hall's $4 million salary through the end of this year actually did the Blackhawks a favor, and it really only cost them like a 4, 5, 6, 7 pick difference at the end of the day, which, yes, you are losing some value there, but again, knowing what we do now and considering how good the trade that I'm about to talk about here in just a second looks at this point in time. Yeah, I think this was a smart decision by GMKD to not retain any salary, even if they didn't get the second round pick that I think us Blackhawks fans wanted to receive. So in hindsight, I like this deal better than I did when it first went down. I really did think the Blackhawks should have gotten a second round pick for helping Carolina land a potential superstar like Rantanen. But again, at that point in time, I didn't know he was only going to be there for 13 games. Didn't know the Blackhawks were going to need to trade Seth Jones, ASAP Rocky. So I originally graded this trade as like a C+, but I'm going to give it a flat B for GMKD. Getting Taylor Hall out without having to retain any salary is a pretty good win in getting an early third round selection, which has treated the Blackhawks nicely in the last couple of years. The second trade, though, that I'm going to break down here is undoubtedly my favorite, though, Blackhawks fans. The Florida Panthers acquired defenseman Seth Jones in a 2026 fourth-round selection in exchange for Spencer Knight, who's been brilliant in his first 2 Blackhawks starts, as well as a conditional 2026 first-round pick that'll slide to 2027 if necessary, while the Blackhawks only had to retain 26% of Seth Jones' $9.5 million AAV, about $2.5 million to get that down to $7 million for the Florida Panthers, through the end of the 2030 season. Did not see the Blackhawks getting this type of return in a situation where they really didn't have all that much leverage because, as Scott Powers told us, there was only 2, offers on the table that Seth Jones was willing to agree to the Dallas Stars and to the Florida Panthers. And rumor has it, Dallas wasn't even really all that interested in that deal. So GMKD really had one deal to work with before this year's deadline to get Seth Jones off of his books. Not only did he do that with only having to retain $2.5 million, but he also got Spencer Knight, who's the new franchise goaltender. I love Drew Commesso as much as the next guy. He's not Spencer Knight, though, as well as a first-round pick. This was a phenomenal trade by Kyle Davidson. I give it a flat-out A+. I think this was an excellent deal, and let me know in the comment section down below if you feel the same way. And I think it's a deal that can work out for the Florida Panthers as well. I just did not think the Blackhawks were going to get that type of value for Seth Jones in a really tough situation. Next move we saw the Blackhawks make came yesterday afternoon, which was the Detroit Red Wings acquiring Petr Mrazek and Craig Smith from the Blackhawks in exchange for Joe Veleno, who is a 25-year-old former 30th overall pick in the 2018 NHL draft. Has kind of struggled to find his footing with the Red Wings ever since stepping onto the NHL scene. He only has 74 points, 35 goals, and 39 assists in 288 career NHL games from 2020 through this season. So for a guy that you spent a first-round pick on, that's pretty disappointing that he hasn't really developed into anything offensively. A decently reliable, fourth line center, fourth line winger, but not all that much offensive upside, and only has 10 points in 56 games for the Red Wings before getting traded. One thing I will say, though, is it's a good why not acquisition by the Blackhawks here. It'll be cheap, as Veleno's only signed on for $2.28 million through the end of next season. And should he figure things out and put things together here in Chicago, he's still going to be a pending restricted free agent, albeit with arbitration rights whenever this current deal does expire. So I think it was an easy, no real risk return here from the Blackhawks. If Joe Veleno doesn't work out, he doesn't wind up working out. But the main point of this deal was getting Petr Mrazek off the books, again, like Seth Jones, in a situation where the Blackhawks seemingly didn't have any leverage because Petr Mrazek is over 30. He has a groin injury, and his numbers have been dropping basically since November. To get him off the books without having to retain any of the $4.25 million AAV that is that is carrying along with his contract through the end of next season, this is a no-brainer slam dunk from the Blackhawks. And quite honestly, I don't know why the Detroit Red Wings made this trade. This, to me, was a sign of a team in complete desperation. I think Craig Smith could be a sneaky good bottom six asset. And I really, really I give him a ton of credit for the wheels that he has for being at this stage of his career. I thought, he would be an attractive piece and I expected him to be moved. But that's the asset that's good enough for the Red Wings to take on Petr Mrazek's deal at $4.25 million for another year when they already have 2 other struggling goaltenders on their roster. This was a head scratcher to me from a Detroit Red Wings perspective. For the Blackhawks, Joe Veleno probably isn't going to wind up being a puzzle piece here, but you get a chance that he could become one, albeit, like I said, a low chance. But the bigger thing is getting Petr Mrazek off the books without really having to give away a true asset. No offense to Craig Smith, is an absolute slam dunk. So the Seth Jones trade, the Petr Mrazek and Craig Smith trades, I thought were excellent from the Blackhawks. I give GMKD an A for this deal. The last move we saw the Blackhawks make before Friday's 3 p.m. Central Time deadline. Can't remember if it was 3 Central or 3 Eastern. I'm all wonky here as I'm on the East Coast. But it was the Blackhawks acquiring Nashville Predators legend Shea Weber, who, of course, has not played in a handful of seasons, has not officially retired, been on LTIR for a while now. The Blackhawks acquired his contract along with Victor Soderstrom, former 11th overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft, and Aku Ratu, I believe is actually how they pronounce their last name, who was a 2019 5th-round pick in exchange for just a 2026 5th. And I saw some Blackhawks fans being like, oh my gosh, for taking on Shea Weber's contract and helping Utah out, especially a division rival. You should get more than this. Shea Weber's contract is only on the books for 102 more games. It expires at the end of next season. You're never going to get a real primetime asset for that. And general manager Kyle Davidson said on the broadcast last night, they were interested in Victor Soderstrom, who, yes, has not looked good in his NHL tenure, but he's still only 24 years old and playing for, an Arizona Coyotes team that was pretty abysmal for years there. I think it's worth a shot giving him another opportunity, especially with how well he's been playing in the SHL so far this season. And then Aku Ratu, probably not going to be a puzzle piece here in Chicago, although he did have a really strong first pro season last year, tallying 44 points in 55 AHL games. He also made his NHL debut and tallied an assist in that contest, but so far this year has not been the same player. Only 19 points, 4 goals only, and 15 assists in 50 AHL games. So change of scenery was probably a good thing for him. The Rockford Ice Hogs could certainly use some more help. This was kind of just like a good why not type of deal for the Blackhawks. And I know this isn't what we want to hear, Blackhawks fans. Should they strike out during the summer and not, have a huge ticket or get enough contracts to really help them get over the salary cap floor, this is kind of a safety blanket that'll help them along the way, a guaranteed $7.8 million through the end of next season. So no brainer for a 2020, what was that? A 2026 fifth round pick. Like, this was a why not deal from the Blackhawks. You could take a chance on a guy like Soderstrom, helps them reach the salary cap floor, worst case scenario. I give this deal a B for the Blackhawks. Not really all that much to say, but I did absolutely love the Seth Jones trade. I did absolutely love the Petr Mrazek trade and getting him off the books. To move both of those guys and only have to retain on Jones at 26%, like, I think that's an incredible piece of business by general manager Kyle Davidson. There's my reaction to the moves the Blackhawks did make ahead of the 2025 NHL trade deadline. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll dive into the moves they didn't make, aka keeping Ryan Donato before the trade deadline expired. Real quick, I got to talk to you all, though, about the fine folks over at FanDuel. The NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or just simply want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay right in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And as my followers on X are likely aware, I love to put together a same-game parlay, usually in the hockey side of things, with an anytime goal scorer and the over-under or a certain player's shots on goal. But there's loads of options for whatever you'd like to place a wager on. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com. Again, that's FanDuel.com in order to join today and get your shot at winning $150 worth of bonus bets. So what are you waiting for? Go and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 2, the one move that I and likely very many other Blackhawks fans thought was the most likely to occur at the deadline was Ryan Donato, considering, his $2 million cap hit through the end of the season on an expiring contract, the 23 goals, the 6-game point streak leading up to Friday's trade deadline, and it being a seller's market, right? All the moves that were going down on Friday afternoon, I'm like, oh my God, KD, you absolutely have to trade Ryan Donato. Really, really expected him to get sold. So did many other big hockey sources out there on X and on social media, but never wound up happening, Blackhawks fans. And my initial reaction to that was, I was pretty upset. I was like, why? Kyle, how do you not trade a guy who's on the precipice of being 30 years old, who's going to get a hefty raise, who's probably having an outlier type of season that's going to be very hard for him to replicate in a seller's market where, crazy moves are being made for incredible returns? I did not understand why Kyle Davidson held on to Ryan Donato, but this is why I always like to let the dust settle for a little bit before giving quick takes and knee-jerk reactions, because sometimes you get some news bombs that give you some more insight into the situation. And according to Scott Powers of The Athletic yesterday, despite this being a seller's market, apparently the Blackhawks were never offered a first round pick or even a second round pick for Ryan Donato, which I find head scratching and really hard to believe, honestly, but I'm not going to call Scott Powers a liar, and it would make more sense in the decision. Like, I know the Blackhawks definitely were interested in keeping Ryan Donato, but I'm sure, like all of us hockey fans out there, when seeing some of the returns that the teams were getting as sellers, like, it felt like it was a no-brainer for GMKD, but I guess the calls never came for Ryan Donato. Again, doesn't really make all that much sense to me. And even breaking down like TSN's trade bait list, I apologize for still having the FanDuel read up. FanDuel getting that free advertisement time. But yeah, like I really thought it was a slam dunk, no-brainer. And I would have, if I gave my reaction immediately after the trade deadline, like I did with the crossover show that I had with Armando Velez, I talked about why I was a little bit frustrated, but getting this insight makes it more understandable. And now it's going to be interesting to see what winds up happening with Ryan Donato as the Blackhawks are down to their final 19 or 20 games of the regular season. And they have apparently put together a healthy 3-year offer to Ryan Donato's camp. And now it's just going to be the wait and see game. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens, but I'm still not exactly sure how to feel about this entire thing. Like, we're going to have to wait and see what winds up happening with Donato, whether he does sign an extension here, whether he goes in a different direction in the free agent market, before kind of giving a final take. But if I were the Blackhawks, I'd still be very wary in terms of the financial details of this contract offer. We heard it's 3 years. We didn't hear how much, what the AAV is going to be. For me, Blackhawks fans, I think the most comfortable I'd be willing to give Ryan Donato is $5 million a year through 3 years. And honestly, I don't like that third year whatsoever. It's been my issue with Kyle Davidson thus far as general manager. The 4-year deal to Tyler Bertuzzi, the multiple year extensions to Jason Dickinson and Petr Mrazek. It put us in a really awkward spot. And does this not feel like a deal that could put us in an awkward spot when Ryan Donato's 31, 32 years old and maybe is like a 10 goal, 20 assist type of guy like he normally is? And also another thing to point out, and this isn't like hatred on Ryan Donato. He's been incredible this season. It's just the truth of the matter. It's going to be hard for him to do this once again, especially when he's a guy who's never played an entire regular season like we're kind of seeing him do right now with Chicago. He has missed a couple of games as well, was scratched a couple of games. So before rushing to a decision here on whether it was right to keep Ryan Donato or wrong, I think we should wait to see what happens with him in the offseason. But like I said, I don't love that 3-year deal. And if it's anything more than $5 million, I'd be pretty frustrated with the situation. We'll see. Who knows if Ryan Donato even wants to sign with Chicago? I'm sure there's part of him that while he's going to get a good opportunity here and probably get more chances than he would with other franchises, it's going to be a while until the Chicago Blackhawks are winning anything. And he's not getting any younger. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Ryan Donato. But there are my thoughts on the Blackhawks electing to keep him at this year's deadline, as apparently there wasn't a first or even a second round pick on the table in return for him. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll get into my thoughts from an awesome Blackhawks 4-3 victory last night over the Utah Hockey Club. All right, just want to say thank you to everyone out there for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, listen to this, Blackhawks fans. Since trading Seth Jones to the Florida Panthers, the Hawks are now 3-0-1 with points in 4 consecutive games after besting the Utah Hockey Club 4-3 in overtime last night, which was a really fun back and forth contest. I would love to get more of those in these final 19-20 games of the season here. But it was, an up and down contest, as it always kind of seems to be for this Blackhawks squad. Got off to a rough start. I mean, the defense was looking horrible in the opening 20 minutes. You know things are bad when Alex Vlasic is committing a dreadful turnover in his own end, leading to an easy Nick Schmaltz goal because, of course, to put Utah ahead 1-0 early. Fortunately, Spencer Knight kind of held it down early and often in his second start as a member of the Blackhawks. An incredible glove save to rob Nick Schmaltz of a second goal in the opening 20 minutes to keep the score to 1-0. And the Blackhawks came out in the middle frame with some extra juice and wound up scoring 3 unanswered goals in this period. Connor Bedard started it off, though, with an incredible effort along the boards, winning a battle, making a kind of accidental, but also it was an accidentally on purpose type of play where, a kid with the skill like Connor Bedard, there's only a few guys in the league who can make that type of play. No look behind the back pass, finds Wyatt Kaiser in the slot. He buries it for his 3rd goal of the season. Wyatt Kaiser continues to look like a stud since his most recent call-up from the Rockford IceHogs, but this play from Connor Bedard was everything. He gets knocked down to the ice, still wins the foot race to the loose puck, beats 2 grown men along the boards, and then sets up Wyatt Kaiser with the primary assist. That snapped Bedard's 7-game point drought, and I think really gave him some good confidence the rest of the way. And then Ryan Donato and Ilya Mikheyev, they stayed red hot. Awesome play by Donato to force a turnover. Quick finish by Mikheyev in front for his 13th goal of the season. Donato extends his point streak to 7 games with the assist as well. But the real highlight of the middle frame, Blackhawks fans, was my boy Frank the Tank Nazar, baby. What a penalty shot goal. Karel Vejmelka is still probably looking for his jockstrap up in the 300s of the United Center. Fake shot, forehand, backhand, roof job. And what a celly by my boy Frank. The kid's got the juice. The kid's got the sauce, Blackhawks fans. And it is fun watching him buzz. His 5th goal of the season. If you remember, I said at the Four Nations break, I'd really like to see Frank Nazar hit 10 before it's all said and done this year. I think the kid's on his way to doing that. Awesome goal to put the Blackhawks ahead 3-1. But, the story of this Blackhawks team all year long has been what goes up must come down. And the Utah Hockey Club came with a strong push in the 3rd period, wound up tying the game 3-3. Because, of course, as John Moreno went top shelf through traffic, and then Clayton Keller, I'm not kidding, it was one of the hardest one-timers I think I've ever seen, and he went, if we thought John Moreno went top shelf, Clayton Keller went top shelf where grandma hides the cookies. Absolutely no chance for Spencer Knight on either of those goals. That tied the game up 3-3 in the 3rd period. The game winds up trickling into overtime, which has not treated the Blackhawks nicely all season long and particularly over the last 2 months. The Hawks are 0-7, 7-game losing streak coming into this one when the game went into overtime, and 2-8 on the season. However, Connor Bedard was a man on a mission. How about this? There was 3 minutes and 10 seconds played of overtime. Connor Bedard was out there for 2 minutes and 18 seconds of it, including a 1:33 shift where he could have gotten off multiple times. Instead, he elected to stay out there. He was going to will this Blackhawks team to victory and do everything in his power. Probably could have passed the puck a couple of times too. He said, no. This is my night. Beats Karel Vejmelka, low glove for the overtime winner. Great celebration from Bedard. Big smiles on the kid. The rest of the team giving him some punches in the celebration huddle. It was awesome to see Connor Bedard get his swagger back last night to lead the Blackhawks to their 3rd victory in the last 4 games and the 4th game in a row that they've recorded a point since Seth Jones got traded. Funny enough, Connor Bedard was the number 1 star of the game with a multi-point effort. However, Spencer Knight was incredible once again, stopping 36 of the 39 shots that he faced for his 2nd win in as many starts with the Blackhawks. .951 save percentage. Our knight in shining armor has been excellent. My favorite part of the night was Connor Bedard in his post-game interview as the number 1 star called Spencer Knight a dog. And Spencer Knight is absolutely a dog, and we couldn't be more excited to have him here in Chicago. Big win for the Blackhawks. They'll be back in action tonight, looking to keep it rolling against the Nashville Predators. Until next time, Blackhawks fans, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all again for joining me on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, a fun weekend episode in the studio of Locked On Florida Panthers host Armando Velez. Reminder, go and check out the episode that I dropped yesterday with my live in-person crossover with Armando Velez, where we touched on all things from the NHL trade deadline. But thank you again, Blackhawks fans. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your weekends. I'll see you on Monday's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. I'll be back in the Chicagoland area. Make sure to drop your Mailbag Monday question in the comment section down below. You can easily reach out on any of my social media channels as well, or can even email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com. Until Monday, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.